sitting with me. Bonnie Typaboo knows Ishvan. He's famous here in Hungary. And we should have another lady coming too, who's Jagor, your god sister. Her name is Eka Radhika. She lives somewhere in America, but I think she's from South America originally. Anyway, we'll see. She asked if she could take part, and I told her she could be a guest. What I like to do, just to tell you guys right off, I like to keep this group nice and small and sweet. And it's we could advertise and get so many other people in the group, but it's not going to be the same. So what I do when someone wants to join, I don't give them a yes, but I don't give them a no either. I just tell them, great, you can be our guest. And you can come for 1 or 2 sessions, and then you just see how it goes. So I'm going to go ahead and start then. Gora Graganya Gana Gocha Goloruharam Goranga Gura Tamagopyara Kopa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshikavaram Satatam Namami Uttama Adama Kichuna Bachila Japchiya Dile Kakola Kahe Premananda Hemona Goranga Hridoya Dariya Bola Bhaja Goranga Kaha Goranga Laha Gorangera Namare Jai Jana Goranga Bhaje Se Hoyamara Pranare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Yashaiva Padambuja Bhakti Labhya Prema-bhakti-candrika Parama Pumata Tasmai Jagan Mangala Mangalaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Madgavirapi Gopala Srikuryat Kripaya Jari Tadaiva Sambhaya Pidva Rishi Yustat Priya Janaha Shri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Sasanatana Rupaka Gopala Raghunatapta Brajabala Vapahima Panchakalpataru Vishcha Kripa Sindhu Bhyahevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'd like to share this verse on the screen. We can all recite together. This is the first verse from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Sri Narottam Prabhu Ashtakam. 8 prayers glorifying Narottam Das Thakur. Shri Krishna Nama Amrita Varshi Vaktra Chandra Prabhadvasta Tamo Baraya Gauranga Deva Anucharaya Tasmai Namo Nama Shri Narottamaya. Again and again I offer my obeisances unto Srila Narottam Das Thakur. He is a true follower of Lord Gauranga Deva. The nectarian shower of the holy name of Krishna radiating from the moon of his mouth destroys the darkness of ignorance. So we're continuing our exploration of Prema-bhakti-candrika. We went through the Mangalacharna, then we went through Sri Guru Charna Padma. So Narottam Das Thakur began with his Mangalacharna, And in the Mangalacharana, as he does in the prayers in Prema-bhakti-candrika, he begins with offering prayers to Guru. And then he goes to offering prayers to the Vaishnavas. And then he'll go to Shri Gaura. So we were reading in a previous session some of the prayers he was offering to the Vaishnavas. And Vaishnava Charana Renu Bhushana Kuriyatanu Jaha Hoiti Anubhava Hoi Marjana Hoi Bhajana Sadhushange Anukshana Agyana Avidya Parajoy. That we should decorate our body with the dust from the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas. That should be our ornament, the Bhushana, he says. And if we do that, then Jaha Hoiti Anubhava Hoi will get Anubhav, we'll get transcendental realization. For those persons who don't have any care or appreciation for the Vaishnavas, what hope is there for them? Narottam goes on to say that Marjana Hoy Bhajana Sadhu Shange Anukshana, that when we're constantly doing Sadhu Sangha, then Marjana Hoy Bhajan, our bhajan becomes purified, and Agyana Avidya Parajoy. This ignorance and nescience is defeated, Parajoy. So this is the solution, sadhu sangha anukshana. We want to constantly associate with devotees. And then in our last session, we read where he begins to glorify Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis. Maybe I should just go ahead and put this up on the screen here. Narottam says, Jaya Sanatana Rupa Prema Bhakti Rasa Kup Jugala Ujjvala Rasatanu Jahara Prasadi Lok Parasarila Dukkha Shok Prakata Kalpataru Janu. All glories, may they be victorious, Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, who are the Prema Bhakti Rasa Kup. Does anybody remember any one of the reasons why Narottam addresses him as Rasa Kup, Prema Bhakti Rasa? Why not Bhakti Rasa Samudra? Why not an ocean? Why just a well? Or why not a Dara? Why not a river? Why not at least a pond?
He said a well is very deep.
That's one reason. That's good.
And it's salty. The ocean is salty, and the well is pure, sweet.
So the ocean has all kinds of rivers and different bodies of water entering into it. It's mixed with all kinds of things. But the well is pure. And the well gives more relief in the hot summertime than a river or a lake, because the well is much, much cooler. So another meaning of kup also that we spoke about, I won't go in that direction right now. We want to go so much over everything. But anyway, that Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, then he says, they're Yugala Ujjvala Rasatanu. They're the very embodiment of Yugala Ujjvala Rasa, or Shringara Ras, meaning that he's glorifying the conjugal mellow, and in particular, he's glorifying Manjari Bhav. And we raise the question, why does he's already spoken about Rupa Goswami before, and then he glorifies the Vaishnavas. What is the necessity of glorifying Rupa and Sanatan again? He's making a very important point, that they have a very special position even amongst all the Vaishnavas. And we should worship them. Jahara Prasada Lok. They give so much mercy, which Pasarila Dukkha Shok can relieve all the distress and lamentation of common people in this world. So that was our last session, just briefly touching on that again. I wasn't able to go over everything in our last session. I'd just like to comment a little bit here. Narottam Das Thakur, he says, Prakata Kalpataru Janu. Prakat has several different meanings, but prakat means material, prakat. So Prakata Kalpataru Janu, that Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis, they're Prakata Kalpataru, they're wish-fulfilling trees, but they're, in one sense you could say, they're material wish-fulfilling trees. Why is Narottam Das Thakur using the word prakat? Well, prakat, one meaning is that they're manifest. But there's a deep meaning here that Rupa and Sanatan, they've incarnated as the Kalpataru, the wish-fulfilling tree of Braja's Madhurya Rasa Manjari Bhav. And to perceive, to find a Kalpataru tree in this world, how are we going to find them? But Rupa and Sanatan Goswami says, they're prakat, they're manifested. In other words, you can see them. How do we see them? We'll hear in the next line that we're going to, by the books, by the works of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, they're prakata kalpataru. They're seen material, prakat, but in this material world, they're manifest in this material world because they're blessing mankind at this time by appearing personally before them. And for all eternity, they're blessing mankind with this gift of prema by giving them this path of prema sadhana through their books. Now, another meaning of the word prakat could be shrestha. Prakat also is a synonym for shrestha. Shrestha means the best or the greatest of something. And so you can compare Rupa and Sanatan, then prakata kalpataru janu, that they're the greatest kalpataru. If you compare Rupa and Sanatan Goswami to an ordinary kalpavriksha tree, Rupa and Sanatan are even greater. Because the reason is that an ordinary kalpavriksha tree can only give some material things to whoever worships it, but it's not capable of giving Krishna prema. But Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, they're prakata kalpataru, they're the best of all the kalpatarus because they're prema kalpataru. They're giving Krishna prema. They're blessing anyone who takes shelter of them with braj prema. So they're shrestha, prakat, the greatest, clearly revealed kalpatarus. In a similar way, if someone prays to a kalpataru tree for something, if someone says, I want to have the most beautiful woman in the world to marry, the kalpataru tree may say, okay, here you go. And that's the beginning of all your problems in your life. So that's an ordinary kalpavriksha tree. It doesn't consider whether what you're desiring is harmful to you or not, or helpful to you. It just gives you what you want. But Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, they're prakata kalpataru or shrestha kalpataru. They're the best kalpataru trees because even though someone may have some material desire, still they give them Krishna prema. An example is given that once there was one materialistic Brahmin who came to Sanatan Goswami and asked him for something very valuable. He said, I heard that you have a philosopher's stone. You have a stone which can turn iron into gold. And Sanatan Goswami said, yeah, I remember something about that. He said, well, where is it? I said, yeah, you can have it. It's over in the garbage. That's where it's at. And this Brahmin, he threw it in the garbage? What is this? And so he went and he found that stone. He was very happy. And he came back to Sanatan Goswami. He said, now, wait a minute. Why did you throw this in the garbage? It means you have something more valuable than this. So I want that thing. You're giving me this thing, which you just threw in the garbage. I want the best thing from you. And the Sanatan Goswami told him, well, if you want that, then you have to throw this away. And I'll tell you what that is. And so he threw that away. And Sanatan Goswami, like a proper kalpataru, kalpavriksha tree, gave him the holy name, gave him Krishna prema. So this is why Narottam Das Thakur, he says, prakata kalpataru janu. And janu means to generate. As Leela Purushottam Prabhu was commenting nicely in our last session, that one of the special qualities of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, they're not just a static tree, they're an ecstatic tree. They're generating other trees. Because Vamcha Kalpataru, All the Vaishnavas are Kalpataru trees. All the followers of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. So let's go on to our next text for today. Now, Narottam Das Thakur, he begins to explain why it is that Rupa and Sanatan are so very, very special. Prema-bhakti-candrika nija grante subhikita kodiyachena dui mahashoy. Jahara Shravana hoite parananda hoy chitte Jugalam Madhura Rasashroy. Jaguar, do you want to read that, please? Can you see okay?
Yeah. The various characteristics of loving devotional service have been elaborately described by these two great personalities in their books. One who hears these descriptions feels transcendental happiness in his heart and takes shelter of the sweet divine couple.
So, Narottam Das Thakur, he's saying it Prema Bhakti Riti Jata. All the different Prema Bhakti Riti. Riti is a word we'll touch on a little bit. Riti, Narottam Das Thakur is such a genius. Prati Shloki Prati Akshay Nanatakoy. Every word, every syllable has so much purport. And this word Riti is a very, very nice word which Narottam Das Thakur uses here. Riti here means a process or a procedure. Prema Bhakti Riti Jata. All this, they've given all these systems. Nija Granti Subhaketa. They describe these things very, very nicely in all their different books. Koriyachena Dui Mahashoy. These two Mahashoy, these two great personalities have done like this. Jahara Shravana hoite. So if we hear these books, Parananda hoy chitte, then we get so much happiness in our chitta. Chitta means our consciousness or our heart. And not just Ananda, but Parananda. We get transcendental happiness. Jugala Madhura Rasha Shroy. And then we, by understanding those books, we get some ability to take shelter. We get some inspiration to take shelter of Shri Radha and Krishna, Jugala Madhura Rasa Shroy. But there's another meaning here, cleverly Vishwanatham's given, Ras Ashray. Ashray means a shelter, that those devotees who take shelter of Rupa and Sanatan's books, they become the Ashraya of Jugala Madhurya Ras. They become the shelter of that. Their minds become the shelter of that Jugala Madhurya Ras. So Rupa and Sanatan Goswami have given us so many different books. We want to say something about that in our session today. So many books. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Ujjwal Nilamani, Lalita Madhav, Vidagdha Madhav, Dhanakeli Komadi, Stavamala are all books of Rupa Goswami. Sanatan Goswami has given us Brihad Vaishnav Toshini and Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And these books are the life of the devotees. So I'm going to go on to the next stanza also. We're going to try to finish 7 and 8 today. We'll go on to a new section in our next session. Jugala Kishora Prem Laksharbhana Jinihem Hina Dhana Prakashila Janra Jaya Rupa Sanatan Deha More Sehidan Seratana Mora Galihara. He says that the word Jini, the nice word Jini, refers to this thing which Rupa and Sanatan Goswami are describing. It's like Laksha Bana Hema. Hema means gold. And they're giving this very wonderful gold, the Yugala Kishora Prem. The pastimes of Radha and Krishna are just like refined gold, not just ordinary gold, but Jini Hinga. Jini means something which is purified or defeated. All the bad things come out of it. It's Laksha Bana Jini Hinga. It's been purified not just once. Bana means be purified, but Laksha many times. When you purify gold by heat, it becomes more pure. And if you do that over and over again, it becomes Lakshabana Jinihima, or purified gold, very, very refined, beautiful gold. So this is the nature of the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. It's like purified gold because there's no trace of any contamination. There's no trace of any material lust or personal selfishness or anything. So he's saying that this is the treasure, the dana, hena dana, prakashila jana, which Rupa and Sanatan Goswami have manifested, prakashila, they revealed in this world. Therefore, he says, Jai Rupa Sanatan. That by saying Jai Rupa Sanatan, he means there's nobody else like them. He's saying that may they be victorious, or may they've conquered over everyone else. They're the topmost of all the Vaishnavas, because they've given these pastimes of Radha and Krishna. Jaya Rupa Sanatan Deha More Shehidan. So then he's begging, please give me this wealth. Shri Ratana Mora Gali Hara. So if you give this thing to me, then I promise I'll wear this. I'll wear those jewels of love like a garland around my neck. So Narottam Das Thakur, he's teaching us the importance of not just giving lip service to Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, but what is the special quality of what they're giving? So he says that Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, they're giving this Yugala Madhura Rasa Shray. We read this in the previous line. That someone hears their books, then they become the ashray, or the abode of this Yugala Madhurya Ras, just by reading the books of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. This is their noble contribution. Prema Bhakti Riti Jata Nija Granti Shubhaketa Likiachi Dui Mahashoy. So they're both known as Mahashoy. Rupa and Sanatan Goswami are very, very special. They're prakata Kalpataru. They're manifest Kalpatarus here. They're manifest in this material world. Also because even though Rupa and Sanatan Goswami are always tasting the topmost nectar in the ocean of rasa, still they have some feelings for the people in this material world. And they're crying for them. So they manifested their realizations, their feelings in the books that they composed. Another meaning of Mahashoy can be that Bhakti Rasa Lampata, that they're always hankering for Bhakti Ras. They're tasting this bhajan ras, this bhakti ras, by hearing, chanting, and things, and they're also tasting it by writing books about it. So we can say that comment, anybody who's had any experience writing something, writing about rasa, speaking about rasa, you know it's a very, very sweet, sweet thing. So when we take shelter of the books of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, then those devotees who take shelter of those books, ashraya, they become Yugala Madhura Rasa. They become the abodes of that Yugala Madhurya Rasa. And therefore we say that Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. That we're Rupa Nugas, we're followers of Rupa Goswami. We're also Prabhupada Nugas. Because Srila Prabhupada has brought this to the Western world and given something which had never been given before in the Western world. But in another sense, we're Rupa Nugas. And Srila Prabhupada, as we'll see a little bit later, Srila Prabhupada stressed that so much, that we're followers of Rupa Goswami because Rupa Goswami is Rupa Manjari. And Rupa Manjari understands all these things. So Rupa Goswami, Narottam Das Thakur here in this song, he's described these books as Prema Bhakti Riti Jata Nija Grante Subhakita Likiachi Dui Mahashoy. That Likiachi Dui Mahashoy, these two personalities have written all these books, and these books are Prema Bhakti Riti. These are guidebooks for Prema Bhakti. And as we mentioned, this word Riti is a very sweet word, a very special word. Narottam Das Thakur is so expert just using this one word Riti, which is just Riti, 2 syllables. he's accomplished so many different things to describe Rupa and Sanatan Goswami's books. How? Because the word Riti, if you look in the Amarakosh, in the dictionary, Riti has many different synonyms. Riti also means Dharma. So he's saying that Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, Prema Bhakti Dharma, we can replace Riti with the word Dharma. Dharma is a synonym for Riti. That he's given the Dharma. Dharma means the nature of something, the essence of something. He's given the essence of Prema Bhakti. Another word is Krama. Krama means a sequence. He's given the sequence of Prema Bhakti. He's given another meaning of Riti is Padati. Padati is a book which speaks about, it's a handbook how to do something. We have Puja Padatis. Puja Padati will tell you, you sit down, you take a spoon in your right hand, an achama cup in your left hand, you put some water and you say, Om Keshavaya Nama, Om Narayana Nama, and you do achaman in this way, and then you perform Anganyasa and you do different things. So that's a Puja Padati. Padati means some sequence of things. It also, Riti means prakar. Prakar again means like prakat, to manifest something. Riti, another synonym of Riti is Swabhav. Swabhav means the nature. And Narottam Das Thakur is indicating by using this one word Riti, so many different meanings, what Rupa and Sanatan Goswami have accomplished in their books. So if we take the word Riti to mean krama or sequence, then we can see how Narottam Das Thakur is perhaps referring to books like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu or Ujjwal Nilamani, which he's given a very, very elaborate sequence of what is Shraddha, Ado Shraddha Tata, Sadhu Sangatato, Bhajana Kriyatato, Nartha Nabiti. He's given a sequence of what happens from faith all the way up to prema. And then in Ujjwal Nilamani, he speaks about what is prema, what is madhurya ras, what is sneha man, panaya rag, anurag bhav, ruda mahabhav, adi ruda mahabhav. He gives a krama, he gives a sequence. So Riti, Prema Bhakti Riti, means that Rupa and Sanatan Goswami have given these very wonderful, thoughtful descriptions of all the steps in Prema Bhakti. Similarly, Sanatan Goswami also in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, in the form of a story with Gopakumar, he's also given so many different steps showing about who's the best devotee, what is the best place. So Riti also means prakar. Prakar means a type, something manifested or a type. So Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami have written about all the different types of Prema Bhakti. Narottam Das Thakur, he's saying Prema Bhakti Riti, all the different types, all the different prakars, the types of Prema Bhakti, like Shanta Ras, where someone has some general love for the Lord, but there's no specific feelings, that there's no mamata, there's no sense of possessiveness, which goes on to Dasya Ras, where someone has some desire to serve the Lord, and they go on to Sakya Ras, where someone wants to be a friend of the Lord, but Salya Ras, where they feel like the Lord is their child or the Lord is their parent, and Madhurya Ras. And they've given so many different examples and descriptions of all these different things. So they've shown all these different types. They've also, another meaning of Riti, as I mentioned, is Swabhav. What is the nature, what is the Swabhav of Prema Bhakti? So the nature of Prema Bhakti is that it draws the mind to Krishna. And someone vyavasyatmika buddhi ekeha kuru nandan, as Krishna says in the Gita, their mind becomes completely focused on Krishna and all their other thoughts go away. So this is a swabhav that they've described. They've described the padati, the system of it, all the different rules pertaining to sadhana bhakti, the different types of offenses of the holy name, different types of seva aparad. What is sadhana bhakti, what is bhav bhakti, what is prema bhakti, what is the qualities of those things, what is the nature of all of them. And Sanatan Goswami has also spoken about these things elaborately in Hari Bhakti Vilas, all the different rules and the sequences of things. He's given Hari Bhakti Vilas. Hari Bhakti Vilas is the padati for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. All these different books, they describe so many wonderful things for the living entities in this world. And if the devotees take shelter of these books, then they become Yugala Madhura Rasa Shray. They become the abode themselves of Yugala Madhura Rasa Shray. And therefore, the Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, we were describing him on the previous session, the Prakata Kalpataru Janu, that they're not just Kalpataru trees, but they're Kalpataru trees, wish-fulfilling trees, who give birth, Janu, to other wish-fulfilling trees. It's a very amazing thing. So these literatures of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, we should contemplate on them. It's very, very important. Jahara Shabana Hoite Premananda Basi Chitti Jugala Madhura Rasa Shroy. That if we meditate on these books, then Premananda Basi Chitte, your chitta becomes absorbed in Premananda. And there's no more anxiety for you. There's so many conspiracy theories in the world today. And because there's so many things going on, so many terrible things and things we don't understand. But as we'd like to point out, at the time of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, there were some of the most terrible things going on in the world. The Muslims had come and they were destroying the temples of Vrindavan. They were destroying the deities. They were mass murdering the Vaishnavas and Pujaris. They were torturing devotees to death. They were taking deities and putting them on the steps of the mosques. So everybody, when they were going to the mosque, they'd kick the deity. They'd go and kill all the devotees in the temple, take the deity and put the deity on the steps. A very terrible thing. And hundreds of thousands, millions of persons were killed. Hindus were killed in India at the time. But how much do you read about that in the works of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami? Not even one word, not even a mention about it. Because that's what goes on in the material world. So the word chitta means anxiety. Chitta also means a consciousness. So Narottam Das Thakur is teaching us that this is the nature of taking shelter of the books of Rupa and Sanatan, that Jahana Shravana Hoiti. He particularly uses the word Shravana, that we hear these things. Because when we hear them from someone who has some understanding of them, there's some subtle feelings released in that sound vibration, which we can't get just by reading it. So he uses the word Shravana, Jahara Shravana Hoite. And what happens when you hear that? Premananda Basi Chitte, that you're floating in Premananda. Your chitta, there's no more anxiety. Your chitta becomes completely full of Premananda. And then Jugala Madhura Rasa Shroy. You become a different person. You change. And those devotees, they become ashrayas, they become abodes, and that Jugala Madhura Rasa. So that means by chanting, by hearing, remembering these books of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, our minds are flooded with this Premananda Rasa. So it also indicates that we want to associate with devotees by using the word Shravana. It's indicating it's a live thing. It's not just something online. It's not just something, because Shravan, Prabhupada comments in several places, he says that when I make a recording and you listen to it, it sounds like I'm there, but I'm not. And you think about that for a moment. Of course, we say Prabhupada is there. Prabhupada is there in his books. And Prabhupada said this several times. You're playing the recording, it seems like I'm there, but I'm not. What is a recording? Previously, it was some magnetic tape. It wasn't that you condensed Srila Prabhupada and captured him and stuck him inside that tape. But there was some imitation of that sound vibration. But that sound vibration has different levels according to the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. And that sound vibration ultimately comes from the heart. But that machine can't capture what's from the heart. It just captures the external, what's called nasika vayu, or the wind coming out of the nose, that kind of sound. It's just some external sound. It's not the prana vayu, or the sound coming from the heart. So Narottam Das Thakur here is saying, Jahara Shavana Hoite. By saying Shavan, he's indicating that we should hear this from a person, from a devotee. something live, not just reading it. We should also read it. We should also remember it. But if we hear this thing, then we get so much ecstasy. We get some realization, because that hearing, to have, as we've often pointed out, to have Shravan Adhikar, or qualification to hear, Ramanujacharya comments in his Gita Bhashya, requires pranipat pariprashna and seva. We should inquire from the person who's doing a thing. We should surrender to them, and we should render service both to the person and to the message. And then we get some qualification to hear. So reading a book, generally speaking, in the West, we read books just to master it, so I can memorize so many different things. And I experienced that, honestly, when I was teaching in VIHE and MI. It's very nice. It's wonderful. The teachers there are wonderful. It's highly recommended program. I don't mean to be negative about it. But I wasn't so inspired always, because I found that a lot of the students were coming and they were more interested in memorizing what are the 5 main things of the Bhagavad Gita, what are the main verses of the Bhagavad Gita, and they just wanted to memorize particular information. And I found also, just by the way, that also caused a lot of consternation, a lot of unhappiness to the teachers who want the devotees to get some realization. But those books are also kopataru. They're wish fulfilling, and whatever we want to get out of them, we'll get. So if we approach these books just with some desire to memorize something and get some prestige and some fame, we'll get that thing. But if we approach these books with the mood of service, which is implied in the word Shravan, hearing, because Shravan implies pranipat pariprashna and seva. If we approach them in a mood of service, then we get something else. Premananda bhasi chitte. We get Krishna prem, jugala madhuda rasa shroy. So another meaning of this statements is that every syllable of these books of Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis are filled with prema. And so chanting and hearing the words of these books itself is a sadhana. And if you read in books like Bhakti Ratnakar, Prema Vilas, and other different books speaking about the Vaishnavas shortly after the time of Rupa and Sanatan, devotees like Narottam Das Thakur and like Shyamananda Srinivas and others, we hear how they were reading these books every day of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. These books are very, very special books, because these the Mano Abhishta, or they establish the inner desire of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through these books. These books are a manifestation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So these books, another meaning is that these books, if we worship Radha and Krishna through these books, then these books become a necklace, which is filled with Yugala Madhurya Ras. Because all of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami's books are full of all the different Rup, Nam, Guna, Lila, all the pastimes, qualities, names, pastimes of Shri Radha and Krishna, and all the different procedures of sadhana bhakti, and all the different philosophy to satisfy them with that. So these books are very, very important. Now, I'd like to go to some statements from Srila Prabhupada in this regard. We just lost Ujjvala Rasagya. Sorry to see you go today. So let me share something. Because there's a common misconception amongst a lot of devotees, that is that I don't need to read the books of the Goswamis. Rather, I just read Prabhupada's books, and that's all that we need. But Srila Prabhupada himself, he spoke about this in a very, very strong way. Let me see if I can find this right here, I think. What's happening? I'm trying to do this thing. It's not working for me. Okay. So this is from a morning walk in 1975, on the 13th of May in Perth, Australia. And maybe Siddha Hari Prabhu could be so kind to read to us from Paramahamsa.
Where should I start?
Paramahamsa Srila.
Okay. Paramahamsa. Srila Prabhupada, I remember once I heard a tape where you told us that we should not try to read the books of previous acharyas. Prabhupada. Amoga, that we should not try to read Bhakti Vinoda's books or earlier books of others, all acharyas. So I was just wondering, Prabhupada, I never said that. Amog, you didn't say that? Oh, Prabhupada, how is that? Amog, I thought you said we should not read the previous Acharya's books. Prabhupada, no, you should read. Amoga, we should? Prabhupada, it is misunderstanding. Paramahamsa, I think maybe he was thinking that there were some things about some of the Gaudiya Math's books. Prabhupada, maybe. Paramahamsa, and sometimes we said that better not to, better to read your books. Amoga, when the devotees went to India this year, they said that Achyutananda Swami very much chastised them that, quote, you should never, if I catch any of you buying Bhakti Siddhanta's books from Gaudiya Math, then I will take it away, unquote. Something like this. Paramahamsa, yeah, that was the reason was because of he didn't want the devotees to going to Gaudiya Math. But there is nothing wrong with the idea of studying the previous Acharya's books.
It's
Go ahead, Prabhupada.
Sorry. Paramahamsa, yeah, that was the reason was because of he didn't want the devotees going to Gaudiya Math. But there is nothing wrong with the idea of studying the previous Acharya's books. Prabhupada, no, who said that is wrong? We are following previous Acharyas. I never said that.
Okay, so this is a statement from Srila Prabhupada's morning walk. How did this understanding come up? We can also perhaps comment. Because Srila Prabhupada stressed that all that's required is reading his books. And especially he stressed, he said, if you just read Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and Nectar Devotion and Chaitanya Charitamrita, these 4 books, he said you'll find everything in these 4 books. And other times he would say everything is in Bhagavad Gita, everything is in Bhagavatam, that's all that's required. And sometimes we have devotees who are a little restless, especially in the beginning, and sometimes they want to become a little famous. And this is spoken about in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam. It's also mentioned in Jaiva Dharma and Chaitanya Charitamrita, that we should not try to read too many books. It's not that there's anything wrong with reading so many books, but what's wrong is we have a wrong motivation. And if our motivation is just to become famous or to stump the swamis, to establish some subtle sex life, that I'm a great learned personality because I can quote so many books, that's wrong. But Srila Prabhupada encouraged devotees to be satisfied with his books. There's another conversation I could, if someone's really interested, I could dig it out somewhere, where Prabhupada spoke about Ramtrit Manas. And he wrote a letter to a devotee who was reading Ramtrit Manas. This is in 1968. And Prabhupada wrote to him and said, why are you reading that book? That book has some impersonalism. Don't read that book, you should read my books. But then on the other hand, Srila Prabhupada himself gave classes on Ramtrit Manas, on at least one occasion in the house of some life member who asked him. And other times Prabhupada said things like, Ramtrit Manas is the best book in Hindi. And Tulsidas is a pure Vaishnava. So what is the context of all of that? If you look in Ramtrit Manas is a wonderful book. It's like the Bible for millions of people in India. And devotees like Radha Govindamar, Srila Prabhupada's disciple, grew up with Ramtrit Manas, and he still quotes Ramtrit Manas in most of his classes. If you read through Ramtrit Manas, there's different commentaries, different translations, first of all. And in 1968, what that devotee was reading was almost certainly some translation done by an impersonalist. But if you read in Ramtrit Manas, the last chapter smashes Mayavad philosophy. The whole book is about personalism and Ram Leela and the glorification of the Vaishnavas and the holy name. So we should understand some of these things, why Srila Prabhupada spoke some of this. I'd like to ask Leela Purushottam Prabhu to read the next one. I think he's familiar with this next quote from Prabhupada's purport. This is from Adi Leela chapter 2, section 117. I think it's something that Leela Purushottam likes. I have a feeling. Go ahead.
False devotees think that studying books of the previous acharyas is unadvisable.
You have to,
Like
you have to give a little more stress. False devotees.
Certainly not as good as Siddhari Prabhu. I was amazed with this dramatic reading. False devotees think that studying books of the previous acharyas is unadvisable, like studying dry empiric philosophies. But Srila Jiva Goswami, following the previous acharyas, has inculcated the conclusions of the scriptures in the 6 theses called the Sat-Sandarbhas. False devotees who have very little knowledge for want of zeal in accepting the favorable directions for devotional service given by self-realized devotees. Such false devotees are like impersonalists, who also consider devotional service no better than ordinary fruitive actions.
3 times. Just a few sentences, Prabhupada calls them false devotees. It's such an important thing. And this is what Narottam Das Thakur is telling us here in Prema-bhakti-candrika. Look, we're starting here, we're glorifying the Vaishnavas, we're glorifying Gurudev, and we're glorifying the Vaishnavas. But Rupa and Sanatan Goswami have a very special place. That their books are Prema-bhakti-riti. They're giving us the process for understanding this Krishna Prema, the understanding these pastimes of Radha and Krishna. Now, I'd like to go on with some statements Srila Prabhupada's made in other places about the subject matter. Let's see. I'm going to share with you. This is from Gauranga Boliti Habe, very famous song of Narottam Das Thakur. This is line 4. Rupa Raghunatha Pade Hoibe Akuti Kabi Hama Bhuja Bose Jugala Piriti. And Prabhupada there's a general translation for this, which gives the word pada as feet. That when will I be eager to follow the footsteps, the feet of Rupa and Raghunath? Hoibe Akuti will become greedy for that. Kabi Hama Bhuja Bose Jugala Piriti. When will I properly understand the loving affairs of the divine couple? So he's saying that this is one meaning of this stanza, that if I follow the footsteps of Rupa and Raghunath, then I'll be able to understand properly the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna. And then Prabhupada, on other occasions, gives another translation for this. Rupa Raghunatha Pade. Pade can also refer to the teachings or the books. Rupa Raghunatha Pada. Pada means the stanzas or the poetry that's written. Rupa Raghunatha Pada Hoibe Akuti Kabi Hama Bhujabo Se Jugala Piriti. Prabhupada, there's another translation Prabhupada gives. When shall I be very eager to study the books left by the 6 Goswamis? In other words, I don't have that. When is that going to happen? When is that greed to study the books from the 6 Goswamis going to come to me? Why is that so important? Why do I have to have the greed for the books of the 6 Goswamis? I have Srila Prabhupada's books. We should understand very deeply what Srila Prabhupada did with his books. Srila Prabhupada did something no one has ever done before. He did something for which we every day we offer obeisances to him. He's our founder, Acharya. He's given us everything because he's condensed and given in an understandable way Gaudiya Vaishnavism in the English language. But we shouldn't misunderstand and think that Srila Prabhupada's books have replaced the books of the 6 Goswamis. And there's many statements from Srila Prabhupada in that regard. Let's see if I can pull up some of those. I have this nice document here, which I'd be happy to share with anybody who's interested. Gaudi Taipu, do you want to read Purport to CC Adi 2118?
Yeah. One can know the glories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu only by reaching in knowledge a conclusive decision about Sri Krishna, strengthened by bona fide study of the conclusions of the Acharyas.
So we should study the works of the Acharyas. Well, how do we do that? Why don't you go on and read the next as a purport to Adi Lila, chapter 5, text 203. Go ahead.
Sri Sanatan Goswami Prabhu, teacher of the science of devotional service, wrote several books, of which the Brihad Bhagavatamrita is very famous. Anyone who wants to know about the subject matter of devotees, devotional service, and Krishna must read this book.
Well, this is a very interesting statement from Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada never translated Brihad Bhagavatamrita. But Prabhupada said that anyone who he writes in his purport here, anyone who wants to understand this subject matter must read this book. In Krishna book, he says that anyone who's interested in meditating on the pastimes of Radha and Krishna should read Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Lila Purushottam. Not Govinda Lilamrita, but
Krishna Bhagavatamrita.
Krishna Bhavanamrita.
Yeah, Krishna Bhavanamrita, yeah.
I knew Lila Purushottam would know that book because he's that kind of person. Now we know what kind of person Siddha Hari Prabhu is also. Prabhupada says that in Krishna book. It's a legal thing. We should do that. Now let's go on again to Adi Lila chapter 5, text 14. Gornitai, go ahead and read again.
The four Vedas, with their supplementary Puranas and the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and their corollaries, which are known as Smritis, are all authorized sources of knowledge. If we are at all to gather knowledge, we must gather it from these without hesitation.
So without hesitation. Again, Srila Prabhupada did not give us the Mahabharata or the Ramayana, or he gave us the Bhagavad Purana. But aside from that, he didn't give us any of the other Puranas. But Prabhupada, once he was asked, what will you translate after this? And Prabhupada was asked by Pradyumna, and Prabhupada said, maybe Padma Purana, or maybe Bhagavad Gita. And the devotee said, but you've already given us Bhagavad Gita. And then Prabhupada said, yes, there are many Bhagavad Gitas. We could give you Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary. We could give you Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. We've given you Baladev Vidyabhushan's commentary. We could give you Sridhar Swami's commentary. So many different commentaries. So there's many statements here from Srila Prabhupada about the importance of reading different books. It's not that Srila Prabhupada didn't want us to read books. And here's a statement from Krishna book I'm just bringing up. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has given us a transcendental literature entitled Krishna Bhavanamrita, which is full with Krishna's pastimes. Devotees can remain absorbed in Krishna thought by reading such books. And again, Prabhupada wrote letters speaking about how articles written by his Guru Maharaj can be published without any hesitation. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur's book, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, may be printed in thousands and distributed. But we want to focus a little bit today on Narottam Das Thakur's instructions about the importance of reading the books of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. Prema-bhakti-candrika jata nija granta subeketa koryachina dui mahashay. They've given us these two things, these two books. And Jahara Shravana Hoite, anyone who hears these books, Parananda Hoy Chitte, will become filled with ecstasy, Jugala Madhuda Rasashraya, and they'll become the ashraya or the abode of Jugala Madhuja Rasa. So now Prabhupada speaks about this in different places. We just read this other translation he gave to Rupa Raghunatha Parihoibe Kute. When will I be eager to study the books left by the six Goswamis? Because if I study the books left by the six Goswamis, it's by doing that I'll understand Kabi Hami Bhuja Bosa Jigula Pariti. I'll understand Radha and Krishna. There's a position, ontological position of the six Goswamis' books. So I'd like to share some other things about this with you. Let's see. Krishna Kun, would you like to read something, or you're stitching there? Would you like to? Go ahead. This is a talk from Prabhupada in 1975 on September 5th in Vrindavan.
First of all, our mission should be How to serve the Goswami.
First of all, this is our first mission, how to serve the mission of the Goswamis. Go ahead.
You cannot act independently. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Vishnu Sthapitam Yena Bhutale, Swayam Rupa Padamayam Dharadi Sapadatam. That should be our prayer. When Rupa Goswami, who has established the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when I shall get shelter of his lotus feet. And that is Narottam Das Thakur prays, Tandira Charana Sevi. Tandira means the 6 Goswamis. H.I. Goshai Jain Tanu Das. I'm servant of that person who is engaged in the service of the 6 Goswamis. And we pray to our Guru Maharaj, Rupanuga, Viruthapa Siddhanta Dvanta Havine. Anyone who is going against the decision of Rupa Goswami, reject him. Rupanuga, Viruthapa Siddhanta Dvanta. This is our process. H.I. Goshai Jain.
So this is Prabhupada saying that this is our line. Anybody who's against the decision of Rupa Goswami, we have to reject them. Prabhupada is declaring this very emphatically. And then again he quotes this line, Rupa Raghunatha Padi. Go ahead, Krishna.
Who will understand Radha Krishna's loving affairs
Unless
one has gone really through the instruction of Rupa Goswami? Radha Krishna loving affairs is not so easy. Radha Kund is not so easy that by force I go to Radha Kund. I become a candidate.
So why is Prabhupada saying here by force? It's not that we see people lining up outside of Radha Kund with bricks, and you were at Radha Kund recently. Did you see anybody with sticks trying to force their way into Radha Kund?
Sorry, Prabhupada azt mondja, hogy erőnek erejével nem mehetünk Radha Kundhoz. A férjem azt kérdezi tőled, hogy láttál valakit ott ilyen téglákkal, akik megpróbáltak betörni oda, vagy nem mondja ezt Prabhupada.
Ishvan was staying at Radha Kund. He almost became a Babaji there, right? You were at Radha Kund?
Majdnem Babaji lettél.
So why is Prabhupada saying it's not so easy that by force? In other words, it's not by our own strength that we do this. We have to go through the works of the 6 Goswamis. So Jai Gaur, why don't you read again Prabhupada's talk in Mayapur? This is on the 14th of February, 1976. You read in the yellow, you like, or read Rupa Raghunatha Padi as you like.
Rupa Raghunatha Padi hoibe akuti kabe hama puja bose Yugala Priti. Don't try to understand Yugala Priti, Radha Krishna's love, abruptly. It is foolishness. You will misunderstand. Therefore, Narottam Das Thakur, he said, Rupa Raghunatha Pade hoibe akuti. Rupa, beginning from Rupa Goswami up to Raghunath Das Goswami, 6 Goswamis, Sri Rupa, Sanatan, Pata, Raghunath, Sri Jiva Gopala Pata, Das Raghunath, 6 Goswamis. So Narottam Das Thakur, Rupa Raghunath, beginning from Rupa to Raghunath Das, Rupa Raghunatha Pade hoibe akuti kabe hama pujhabo. Don't try to understand Radha Krishna love without going through the instructions of Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Das Goswami. Like, that is the instruction.
Then you can read this lecture Prabhupada gave in Prayag. This is, if devotees think that Prabhupada did not want us to read the works of the 6 Goswamis, as Prabhupada said a minute ago in that conversation, Prabhupada said it is misunderstanding. Go ahead. This is the 34th of January, 1971. Jai Gaur.
We are following authorities, Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, Madhvacharya, and Madhvacharya in the line of disciplic succession. Madhvacharya was from Vyasadeva, and from Madhvacharya, Madhavendra Puri, not directly, through many other disciplic succession. And Madhavendra Puri, Ishwar Puri, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the 6 Goswamis. The 6 Goswamis, Narottam Das Thakur says, Rupa Raghunatha Pade hoibe akuti kabe hama puja bose Yugala Priti. Without following the Goswamis, who are expert, directly instructed by Lord Chaitanya, nobody can understand what is Radha Krishna Lila. It is not possible. Persons who try to understand Radha Krishna Lila directly, because it appears the dealings of It appears the dealings of young man and woman. They like it very much. Instead of studying other pastimes of the Lord, they go directly to the Radha Krishna Lila, and the result is they're misled, and they become sahajiya. So we have to approach Radha Krishna through the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, through the teachings of 6 Goswamis. Then it will be perfect knowledge. Mahajano yenagata sapanta.
So this is so important. This is one reason, this is one difference actually between just having a religious society where people are pious and they're members of something, and a society of prema bhakti. This is a difference between kirtan and prema nam sankirtan. We have to read the works of the Goswamis. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the beginning of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he's explained how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an extended subject in the language of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. And if we want to understand him, we have to take shelter of the devotees who come with him. So this, we take shelter of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, but we do it through the books of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. Otherwise, we can't understand them at all. So I'm going to go ahead and just go over these two verses again, just recite them again together, and then we can take some discussion amongst the devotees if you like. So he says, after speaking about Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, he says, Prema bhakti vritti jatta nija grante subhaketa koriyachena dui mahashoy jahara shravana hoite parananda hoy chitte jugala madhuda rasa shroy. The various characteristics of loving devotional service have been elaborately described by these two great personalities in their books. One who hears these descriptions feels transcendental happiness in his heart and takes shelter of the sweet divine couple. Or as we commented, another meaning of the person who's Jahara Shravana Hoite, who hears and Ashraya takes shelter of this topic, then they become the Ashraya, they become the shelter themselves of this Jugala Madhuda Rasa. And then in the text 8, Narottam Das Thakur further explains about the books of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. Jugala Kishora Prema Lakshabana Jinihima Hina Dhana Prakashila Jana. That these books are just like very, very refined gold. They're very, very purified. In other words, there may be other different books. That's kind of what's implied here when you speak about pure gold. Otherwise, what is a necessity? If you say pure gold, then you're also indirectly referring to impure gold. But by saying that they've given this very, very pure thing, Rupa Sanatan Goswami, it indicates that there's a lot of other people who've written other things which are not pure. And we want to hear from Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. This is the dana, this is a great wealth, prakashila jana, that they've given to us. So all glories to Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, Jai Rupa Sanatana. They're victorious over all of the Vaishnavas because of what they've done. Deha more she dana. Please give me that wealth of your books, she ratana mora galihara. And I'm going to wear those jewels of love. What are these jewels of love? These books. I want to wear the books of the 6 Goswamis around my neck. I want to keep them with me always. And why does it say around the neck? Why not around the head? Well, you can wear them like a crown. Because by putting them around my neck, I'm keeping them over my heart, indicating that there's something very, very close to my heart, not just close to my mind, something I'm going to put on my head. So Narottam Das Thakur, in this way, he's glorifying, he's teaching us that if we want to do pure bhakti, then we have to worship the Vaishnavas, and in particular, we have to take shelter of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, and we do that through their literatures, through their books. And this is one reason why Srila Prabhupada, one of his most important books was Nectar of Devotion. He gave us Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And at one point, Srila Prabhupada lost the whole manuscript for it. But Prabhupada started again. He said, no, this is so important. We have to have this thing. Prabhupada stressed so much. He said once that Nectar Devotion is like the law book for all the devotees. in our society. Everything is given in there. So we'll go ahead and stop there. I'm going to ask, we only see her picture here because probably she's doing intimate service for Sri Sri Radha Govinda in the Kunj in Denver, Colorado. We'll ask Bindu Sundari, because she's probably got to go pretty soon. I think she's got to give class or take part in class anyway. If she's available to share some realization or something with us. Hare Krishna, Bindu Sundari, nice to see you. It looks like you're doing a different kind of deity worship. This morning, not Radha.
I'm like multitasking a lot right now.
You have all kinds of different hats. You have a temple president hat, a mother hat, a wife hat, a friend hat, so many different hats. What do you have, a cake there or something? What is that?
I'm making the small deities garlands.
Oh, that's what.
And I'm home.
And you're getting someone supervising you while you're doing it, looks like.
Yeah, he's learning his reading right now.
So anyway, any reflections from you today, Ms. Sundari?
I was just thinking how funny it is that Prabhupada's instructions get totally misconstrued, and people take what he said and then make some weird politics out of it or something. But I really appreciate how we're meant to be absorbed in the literatures of the acharyas, and I feel eager to read them. And I hope that I can do more reading and studying. So at least now I get to listen while I'm doing other things.
I oftentimes think, was it Gopi Pranadana Prabhu wrote one commentary, wrote some article about how he was translating. And he said one of the special things for him for translating was getting a chance to see Prabhupada's works from a different angle. He said, usually we read Prabhupada's books in his purports, but now he's studying, Gopi Pranadana was studying the Acharya's commentaries, and he was seeing what Prabhupada took from those commentaries. and he's also appreciating that it was Srila Prabhupada, by Prabhupada's mercy, that we got those commentaries of the previous Acharyas. It's Prabhupada's mercy that we even know they exist. It's by Prabhupada's mercy that we can understand them at all. It's very, very important. We shouldn't be so. I remember going to one temple once and giving a class before a lot of new devotees. It was a temple in India, and after the class, one of the new devotees came to me with a question. You may have heard me say this before. I find it very disturbing. And the devotee said, Prabhuji, is it okay if I read Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita? And I was horrified. Of course it's okay to read Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. You must read Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. He said, well, my counselor says I shouldn't. I said, what? He said, not until after I read Easy Journey to Other Planets, then I can read Path of Perfection, then I read Beyond Birth and Death, and then I read each one of the small, and then I can read Ishopanishad, and after reading Ishopanishad, then I can begin reading Bhagavad Gita. And I didn't want to speak against his counselor. I don't believe in doing it. That's not cool, because also you can really misunderstand somebody by hearing from some other person. And I said, well, maybe he's wanting you to study it in a systematic way, but personally, I think you should read whatever you're inspired by. And it's not that other books or books by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, other books are wrong. We should go through Prabhupada's books first. But as you said, there's so many misunderstandings. And when you're mentioning that, it reminded me, I think it was in Karma Prabhu's book about Srila Prabhupada. He told a very interesting story. There was a newsletter that was coming out regularly talking about what Srila Prabhupada was doing. The devotees who were with Prabhupada would transcribe some of Prabhupada's lectures and comments and things, and they'd send it out to the whole world. So Prabhupada, there was one conversation, someone said something like, Prabhupada, rice dal and chapatis are enough to live on. And Prabhupada said, yes, rice dal and chapatis are all that you need. So that's all that he said. So when that newsletter came to Australia, the devotees took that to mean that it's Maya, Sabji's Maya, pakoras are Maya, and all that we should have is rice dal and chapatis. And they did that for like a month or 2 months. just eating like that, until finally somebody asked Srila Prabhupada about it. And Prabhupada said, no, this is wrong. So we can understand Srila Prabhupada in different ways. And one way to understand Srila Prabhupada, I think, too, is by reading Rupa Goswami's books, which we're fortunate now, Bhanu Maharaj and some others have been translating. Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu is translated for us. In reading those books, we can see something more of the heart of Srila Prabhupada. So, anything else you want to comment, Bindu Sundari?
Yeah, I like that. I appreciate we can see the heart of Srila Prabhupada by what he took from the acharyas and what he chose to elaborate on in the purports, what he took from the acharyas, and just with his mission in mind. I feel like coming closer to understanding Prabhupada more and more by when I do read other texts, my other acharyas, and appreciating the different moods, and then just the richness of coming in contact with those acharyas in that way.
Of course, there's also a lot to be said about translations. And sometimes people, my Guru Maharaj, I used to read out translations for him regularly. He would read Sanskrit or Bengali from some book, Prema-bhakti-candrika or something. And I would read the translation. And many times he would say, what is this? Nonsense translation, totally wrong. It's like your little boy there. We can see behind you. He's studying and learning to read. So maybe he picks up a book from you one day, the compiled teachings of Albert Einstein, which must be one of your light books you read all the time, I guess. And he picks up that book and he says, wow, I'm learning to read, so I'm going to start reading this. And maybe you tell him, that's not really the best book for you to start reading, because he's not going to understand it. E equals M and a C and a 2. It just doesn't mean anything to him. There has to be some background first. There has to be some foundation. So Srila Prabhupada's books are also foundational for us, and they're gateways for us, also to the works of the previous acharyas. But they're foundational in our society and for us as individuals. But I don't like this kind of book police mentality that people have, that nobody's allowed to read anything except for Prabhupada's books. And then I'll give you another example, one of my pet peeves. From a temple in North America, I'm not going to say where, I used to be affiliated something with, and I met one of my old friends from there, and he said, yeah, you should come and give some class. I said, oh, well, thank you. And he said, but one thing, we have a strict policy in our temple. No one is allowed to quote anything except for Srila Prabhupada's books. You're not allowed to quote Bhakti Ratnakar or Brihad Bhagavatamrita or any only Prabhupada's books. That kind of hurt my heart. But I told him, I said, well, that's okay. I don't mind that. I think that's really nice. I like hearing from Prabhupada's books. I said, but I would be upset then if I hear devotees speaking something from a movie or something from a newspaper. I would rather hear from Narottam Das Thakur's Prema-bhakti-candrika than what you've read in the newspaper. I'm sorry. Although there may be something wise in the newspaper too, and Prabhupada also sometimes quoted things from the newspaper. It's not totally wrong. But if you're going to make such an ironclad rule like that, let's be real. So many devotees, I've seen they're quoting movies and whatever, and I'm not saying they shouldn't do that. But why? What's wrong with it's something wrong with quoting Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur? But quoting movies is okay. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Bindu Sundari. Let's see here. Gaunitai Prabhu. We know it's like, gosh, it's got to be like what? Let me see, 4.5 hours. It is now for Gaunitai. So it's 11 o'clock at night almost. It's about 10 till 11 for him. We all want Gaunitai to take rest soon. So Prabhuji, any reflections from you today?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Oh, as I see that Narottam Das Thakur's Gauranga Bolite Havi verse is like a condensed guideline, and the Prema-bhakti-candrika is expressing or explaining in details what he meant for these few lines. And it's very beautiful to see that when we meditate on that Gauranga Boliti Have verse, then we can use all these informations, all these other kind of explanations. So that's beautiful, really.
Very good. Thank you, Prabhuji. Yeah. It's so very, very important. Prema-bhakti-candrika, as we mentioned in our first session, I think, Gorgasha's Babaji used to say that if you just read Prema-bhakti-candrika and Prarthana, you can get Krishna Prem, you can get everything, just reading those two books. Those two books are so very, very important. Naughton Das Thakur has given us everything. But thank you very much, Prabhuji.
And other thing, today I have a nice realization that it's about refining the gold. When you are hitting it and melting it again and again, that's like we read again the books. So a few years ago, my Guru Maharaj gave me an instruction to read Laghu Bhagavatamrita. I found a little bit dry, but I did it. And then I put it down. I made a nice for that, and I put it aside. But a few days ago, I gave class here in Mayapur for a little group. And then someone asked a question which was really supported by Laghu Bhagavatamrita, how these avatars, how the incarnations of the Lord, how they exist, where they exist. And all the Laghu Bhagavatamrita is about these kind of things really precisely explaining. So then today I took the Laghu Bhagavatamrita again and started to read again. It was so nectarian, not like dry at the beginning, but it was nectarian to follow how nicely they are explaining the different topics. It's so different. So that's I find that, yeah, you have to read them again and again. And we have to have time for that, have to have eagerness for that. And then we get the taste, the nectar coming from their books. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, and it's so very, very important. Shiva Maharaj also is giving so many nice books now of our Goswamis and commentaries and things from them, because he understands this principle. It's so very, very important. But we need to do it in line with Srila Prabhupada. It's very important, which he nicely does too. Okay, thank you. I'm just laughing because I just read something Jai Gaur typed in from Siddhahari Prabhu. It's really very rasik thing. Everything except salad is Maya. We have a raw food fanatic. Okay. Siddhahari Prabhu, do you want to share anything with us today? Is Jaguar being good and nice to you?
He's been too good, Prabhu. I'm already feeling Prema-bhakti-candrika, isn't it? And you feel the separation from your beloved, yes, in the presence of Krishna. And the gopis feel that. Right, Krishna. So I'm feeling something similar. I guess Krishna is giving me a taste because it's too sweet, and I'm already thinking that he will be going to see you in Puri or whenever you go there, and we'll lose him too soon.
I don't know. I don't know if he's going to see us in Puri very quickly.
He's trying to convince me to live in Govardhan instead of Puri.
I told him the good news that you're moving to Govardhan.
Actually, you know what we really want to do? I really want to try to make some community in Puri, Kirtan, and Puri's a lot easier, to be honest with you, than Govardhan. Govardhan, I love to visit Govardhan, but staying there for the winter time, I just Indradumna Maharaj just took a group of devotees to South India because it was just too cold right now. It's too intense. But Puri, you can get suntan on the beach. So many people, you'll be doing kirtan there, and so many things going on. Anyway, is that your realization, Siddhahari Prabhu?
No, I will just say that I really appreciate how you took each word from this prayer, and you're able to come up with different translations or ways of understanding it. And I was thinking back in my mind, there's this whole chapter in CC where we hear Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives 61 explanations of the Atma verse. And I was seeing a similar analysis being done by you here in the case of when you took the word Ripi and you were like, hey, it can mean this, then we understand it this way, if we can mean this, and we can understand this way. So I was very impressed by your presentation. I was thinking that's you're following in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by taking that approach where you take a word and then you come up with different translations and different meaning for application purposes. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for making us part of that.
I'm lucky I have a Sanskrit dictionary, and I have some commentaries in Prema-bhakti-candrika too. But that's our system. We should, these words are important. This language is important.
Yeah. And then I've been recently reading BRS, Bhakti Samrita Sindhu, specifically after chapter 19, because I never read past chapter 19 before.
Is that legal?
And I wanted to share it with you recently, because I was saying that, in terms of going deeper in my spiritual life, and he said, told me, one of my mentors, told me that you should read BRS deeply. And as I'm reading it, as you were sharing, I feel there is so much wealth left by Acharya, especially Sri Rupa Goswami in BRS, because he is discussing this different elements of tasting rasa, or how the rasa is experienced by different residents of Raja. And when you hear those examples, number of things happen. One is that when you hear them, just reading them, not even hearing, I guess he says reading them, but it makes you eager, because you want to know, hey, what was the real pastime? Because he quotes so many small pastimes in every section. I'm like wondering, hey, I never heard that story. I never heard this one. I never heard that one. And then I'm really eager to find out which books is he mentioning those stories from. And I was thinking as a project, to go back and to find out the whole story behind each of those, symptoms and ecstasies you talk about, and really find out, here, where, and when is Radha Krishna experiencing those having those pastimes. So I feel like Sri Rupa Goswami, Sadhaka Goswami, as you're mentioning here, and through this translation, that they have by giving us this wealth of books, and by hearing them, one gets immersed, or one gets this shelter of the Yuga Madhurya. And I think I could feel some of it, a glimpse of it while reading BRS. So that was my reflection. I also have a question after that.
I'm just appreciating how just by starting to read these books, these things start coming to us. We start, we just, wow, that's really sweet. That's really nectar. And it's such an important thing to read these books. What's your question, Prabhuji?
My question was this, that you were talking about this differentiation, I think, and you have brought it before also, the process of hearing versus reading, and how there is a gradation, or there is like a ladder in terms of taking knowledge from our spiritual preceptors. And you giving this, you didn't give this specifically, but you were mentioning some references from 11th canto where there's discussion on that. So I was specifically wondering, like, in terms of reading the books written by acharyas, and you were mentioning that you were giving this discernment in the prayer, that how they have written these books, and then they should be heard. So that these are two separate things. One thing is that the acharyas wanted us to have their realizations, but it looks like Narottam Das Thakur was mentioning, and you were talking about it, that they should be heard from a realized soul, not just read. So I was wondering, in terms of personal study, how should one study these books if one is personally studying them? Is there a scope for that also, a self-study process? Or does it mean that they all should be heard practically from a realized soul in person?
I remember reading in Prema Vilas a very beautiful description of Shyamananda Prabhu and Rasikananda and the devotees, and how they were reading all the different books of the Goswamis. And Vaishnav Toshini is mentioned, Brihad Vaishnav Toshini, and Lalita Madhav, Vidagda Madhav, and every day it's saying they're reading Govinda Lilamrita and this and this. And it said something that they were spending like 8 hours a day reading those books together as a group. So from that, I can understand there's a lot of benefit in reading together as a group. I know some of you probably already do that. Leela Purushottam Prabhu has a group like that. It's a very powerful thing to read together as a group. But especially I find if you have comments also, if we just mechanically read with no comments, no thinking about it, then it can become a little external. So ideal is if we hear some presentation, which is reading, but also a mix and some explanation of it. That was Srila Prabhupada's process of Bhagavatam class. I would say that's ideal. Secondly, I would say it's really good to sit down and read together as a group and take turns reading and discussing amongst yourself. Thirdly, if we're not able to do that, we can read out loud. And that's also a nice thing. And if we can't read out loud, then we read quietly. But we should try to read. My grandma's also told me 4 things. He said, first, you should hear from the proper person. He said, you should hear, read, write, speak. You hear from the proper source, then you read, and by reading, you remember what it is that sadhu, what Gurudev spoke. And then you begin to understand. So you hear it, you read it, and then you write it down. You make notes on it. And Srila Prabhupada, he once told Tamal Krishna Maharaj that 15 minutes of preparing for class is equivalent to 2 hours of reading. So you hear, you read, you write. And then by writing it down, he said, you understand it. And then after you've written it down, then you speak it. Just like Gwanithai Prabhu was saying, he's reading through Laghu Bhagavatamrita, and now he's speaking that thing. And then when you speak that, Rama said, then it becomes yours. You realize that. So we hear, read, write, speak. I think Prabhupada, Gurma spoke that to me, but I think it's something he got from Srila Prabhupada somewhere, as I recall. Is that helpful, Siddhahari Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu, very helpful. I'm going to meditate on what you just said and try to assimilate it into my way of studying and reading. Thank you.
And is it okay if Jagor says something?
Yes,
It's
Prabhu. I really like, apparently I didn't catch this in one of the previous classes. You were saying that Rupa and Sanatan are wish-fulfilling trees that give birth to other wish-fulfilling trees.
It's a little hard to hear you. Sometimes you just something funny on the mic.
Okay. I said apparently I didn't catch this in another previous class, but you were saying that Shri Rupa, Shri Sanatan are wish-fulfilling trees that give birth to other wish-fulfilling trees. I just thought that was...
Vila Purushottam threw that in at the end of the last session. That was really good.
And I also really liked how you're saying we shouldn't think that Prabhupada's books have replaced the books of the 6 Goswamis. Sometimes there's a mood like that, and you're addressing that really nicely. I really love the whole angle of the whole katha. And I was also thinking that those devotees that told me that you could only quote Srila Prabhupada's books, I bet you could find some far out parts of Chaitanya Charitamrita to ruffle their feathers, even though it's Prabhupada's, purports and translations. They might still be, disturbed by something like that.
Yeah, if you read from teachings of Lord Chaitanya, they'll become very disturbed. Or if they read Nectar Devotion after chapter 12 or something, they'll become very, very disturbed. It's a funny thing. But there is some reason for that, I want to say too, though, because we understand that we have a responsibility in our temples to help new people who are coming. And if some new person's coming and they start hearing about how, Mother Yashoda is the ashraya of parental rus and this and that, they're going to ashraya, what is it? There's so many technical terms and so many higher type of things, they may be a little confused. But it's a whole art. I also don't agree that we should never speak those things. And if you look in Prabhupada's early lectures in Los Angeles in 1968, on Rasa Purnima Day, Prabhupada gave a lecture about the Ras Leela. And one of the devotees, and these are brand new devotees, 1968, one of the devotees, Madhudvisa Prabhu, asked Prabhupada, can you say something about the Ras Leela? I often mention this. And Prabhupada said, well, he spoke for a few minutes how you're not qualified to hear it. And then he started describing the Ras Leela and what it's like to roll from Krishna and this whole thing to these brand new devotees in 1968. But on the other hand, there's a famous story in India, when Prabhupada was visiting some life member's house, and they told him, Swamiji, we want to hear about Ras Leela. And Prabhupada said, no, it's too high. And they kept pushing. Swamiji were very keen. And finally, Prabhupada said, you may be qualified to hear it, but I'm not qualified to speak it. And he just flatly refused. So we should understand and not try to be, like a bull in a china shop, just barging in, and oh, I knew all these Russic things and throwing things around and that, and it just disturbs things. I found though that even with brand new people, even at a Sunday feast lecture, you can speak things from Nectar Devotion, even from later chapters. If it's done in a nice way, in a right way, understanding who you're talking to. It's just personalism. We should always bear in mind who it is that I'm speaking to and not try to talk at them or over their head or try to impress them or just have some sense gratification exercise myself, but we're trying to communicate and what will they understand. It's really important. And being able to, my humble feeling is being able to convey the meaning of those things is more important than just being able to speak it. Someone may memorize so many things and they may be able to speak so many things, but if someone can express it in simple language, it's far, far better. There's
So
some maybe somebody here knows from, what's his name, from Albert Einstein. So that something like real intelligence means to be able to take something complex and explain it to a child or something like that.
yeah, I've heard that before. That you can only claim to know something if you can explain it to a 6-year-old, something like that.
Prabhupada says it too, Kun.
So it's I'm getting from what you're saying that it's more of a person-to-person thing in terms of who's ready to hear what, because in so many places in the Bhagavatam, and I was just reading in Madhurya Kadambini the other day, and you speak it all the time that the prema has to come into the heart before the kama and the anarthas can leave. So it's very important that everyone can hear about Radha and Krishna directly in order to get rid of the unwanted things in the heart. And you quote that katha from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta all the time about artha pravriti.
Yeah, that's very, very important. And that's why Gorni Thakur was asking, he said in the word for words translation of what Jini was missing. Jini means to defeat or to overcome. So if we hear these literatures, we'll overcome, as Jai Gorpa was pointing out, we'll overcome these anarthas, we'll overcome these things. Otherwise, we won't be able to. And it's not just that just by reading it, it's just some magical thing is going to touch my heart and all of a sudden I'm a different person. But it also, I think it begins when we have some understanding, some philosophical understanding. And then we realize that's not my goal. I just don't want that thing. I want this other thing, and the sweetness overwhelms us.
Have you read that letter from Prabhupada to Hayagriva? Hayagriva Prabhu is saying that he's thinking about getting married and he's very much disturbed by sexual desire. And Prabhupada's saying, and it's 1968 or something, and Prabhupada's saying, if you're very much disturbed by sexual desire, then you can hear about the pastimes of Krishna with the gopis. He said not to imitate, but you should hear. And that's what
Srila Prabhupada gave Krishna book in the very, very beginning. But these things have to be understood in a personal kind of way. And I think partly that's part of the problem that we have as an institution. When things become institutional, you lose the personalism and you just want to have rules and things for people. And we become then afraid of people being independent thinkers. We become afraid of people reading things which are too deep or too rich and something. We just like when they just read about you're not your body and and you should be a vegetarian, and we give classes about that forever. Thank you, Prabhuji. Krishna, you want to share anything? Or you just maybe in a minute. Leela Purushottam, you want to share anything with us?
Hare Krishna. Yeah, I'd like to still expand on Siddhahari Prabhu's question, because I had the same, exactly this relationship between reading and hearing.
Mhm.
And I was thinking, like, do we ever come across another word than Shravan in that regard, which is like, one would maybe interpret it that it engages the sense of hearing, actually, like Shravan. But we hear like Bhagavat Shravan, and you know, anytime we even interpret it in the translations as reading, we still, the original word is Shravan. So my question is
There's
there,
another one too, Swadhyaya.
yeah, that was only the word that I came to, Svadhyaya, that would be like personal study.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to ask if there is
Swadhyaya doesn't actually mean study, as you probably know. Swadhyaya means to recite, and that's an important thing. We should recite that. I can, maybe I should share something on the screen here. This is from the article that I wrote a few years ago called From the Lips, which we printed in the back of Pariprashna. This is a section, I'll go ahead and read myself. Levels of sound. This is what I was referring to. In Srimad Bhagavatam 11, 12, 17, Krishna explains the various types of sound and the difference between gross and subtle forms of sound. Sa esha jivo vivarar prasutihi vanena gosena goham pravishtaha manomayam sukshmam upetya rupam matra swarovarna iti svatishtaha. The Supreme Lord said, I am the Lord who gives life to every living being, manifesting in the various chakras. I enter the Muladhara chakra of Brahma, along with the prana phase of the subtle para sound. I then rise to the Manipur chakra, and the mental phase is Prashanti, and the Anahata chakra, the intellectual phase and subtle form, is Madhyama. I then take the gross form of short and long sounds, different intonations in the syllables of the alphabet. In of his Bhavarta Deepika, on this commentary, Sridhar Swami quotes the Rig Veda. I'm just going to skip the Sanskrit, I don't think it's so long. But learned Brahmins know there are 4 stages in the evolution of sound. 3 remain hidden in the heart as imperceptible vibrations, while the 4th stage is what people ordinarily understand as speech or words. And Vishwanath, in his commentary, in the previous mentioned verse in the Bhagavatam, explains these 4 stages. 3 are called para, or highest degree. They're situated in prana, the base of the spine, pashanti in the mind and navel, and madhyama situated in the intelligence and the heart. Sages do not reveal their forms. The 4th, called vikari, is external speech in the vocal organ. So when a pure devotee speaks, all the levels of sound are present. And according to their level of receptivity, they purify listeners on different levels. That purification only takes place when the sound is vibrated by the transcendental prana, the mind, intelligence, and senses of the pure devotee. When the sound is recorded, the machine captures only an imitation, doesn't even capture the vikari, the gross sound, it just captures an imitation of the vikari, because a machine has no prana, no mind, and no intelligence capable of recording the deeper levels of the vibration. The vibration may also be symbolically recorded in the form of letters on a page. Yet again, the actual vibration is absent. And then we go into Bhakti Sundarbha, Jiva Goswami speaks about the importance of hearing and reading in that way. Does that help, Prabhuji?
Yeah, maybe the direction of my thoughts went like I was thinking, like, could we trace the history of that topic to the interpretation of the history of Vedas, meaning that they were transmitted by the sound originally, and only for Kali Yuga actually they have been written down, for the lack of our ability to remember the sound when we receive it, and what to speak of then contemplating on it, and then deliberating on it, and then process it in this way practically within we are not so much used to stress the reading, because it's not the original way of getting the Vedic knowledge. Is that like reasonable thinking?
Yeah, there's some of that, but also we're so messed up in Kali Yuga. We don't know how to read, we don't know how to hear, we don't know how to do anything properly because we're so overcome. Mandam samanda mutayu, mandabhagas paditaha. We're so overcome with lusty desires and sense gratification, we just become mad persons. And our hearing is all completely messed up. When we hear about hearing, when we hear descriptions given how in such a yuga people would memorize books and things. Then we think of things like, I know when I first heard that, I thought of one of my favorite books before I was a devotee, which was Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. If you've read that book, in Fahrenheit 451, Fahrenheit 451 is the temperature that a book burns. And it's all about a future, terrible future when people burn books. Books are illegal because they don't want you to think. And so the climax of the book, what happens is they find out there's a whole group of people living amongst everybody, but in hiding, they were memorizing books. And someone would introduce him, hi, I'm War and Peace. And he just memorized the entire War and Peace book. So that was Ray Bradbury, a popular book, at least when I was growing up, Fahrenheit 451. So when I first heard from this description in the Bhagavatam that people were hearing the Vedic literatures like this, I thought of Ray Bradbury. I thought, oh, they're memorizing this entire thing. But that's a misunderstanding of sound. That memorization is just vicari. It's just some external sound vibration that you're collecting some information of, and it's not something realized. So how does that become realized? It has to be pranipat, pariprasna, and seva. Otherwise, there's no realization to it. So when we hear about these personalities memorizing books or passing on Vedic literatures and oral tradition, that oral tradition wasn't like Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, where they're just memorizing books. I am War and Peace, I am Srimad Bhagavatam, or whatever like that. As Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says in another article, which we also printed in the appendixes of Pariprasna, he said that some people, after the disappearance of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, some people have memorized everything that he's written, but they haven't understood a single word. So that's a very deep statement. It's not just that we understand something just by reading it or just by memorization, but that understanding is something which comes very deep in the heart. Okay,
it actually comes to my like second part of this dilemma, because we are used to think in this way that we don't want to approach like our books of the Acharyas, Srila Prabhupada's books, in the academic way. Yet there is certainly big scope for studying them deeply, spending a lot of time with them, going through the text again and again, even memorizing the verses, like your Guru Maharaj said, if you can't quote Shastra, don't tell them you're my disciple.
I know
Meaning
devotees,
you have to spend a lot.
Yeah, I know devotees who are memorizing purports.
Yeah.
It's really cool. What a good exercise to do with the mind. Srila Prabhupada, just in the same way that Prabhupada prayed and said, when will that greed come for me that I want to read the books of the Goswamis? We should also, when will that greed come when I want to read Prabhupada's books? Who is this? Gorni Tire, somebody was asking me about this recently. I don't remember what it was, but I was present in 1 year in Mayapur, the ILS program. It's not really personally my thing, to tell you the truth, but it was nice. It was sweet. A lot of nice devotees and nice presentations and things. And one devotee made some presentation, and he gave some statistics, which I don't recall. And he said something like he's found that of the leaders, like, I don't know, 80 or 90% have not read all of Prabhupada's books. in our movement. Some crazy figure like that. Maybe that wasn't the exact figure, but it was some really outrageous figure amongst the leaders, and what to speak of general devotees. So we read those books, we should understand that Srila Prabhupada is present in them. And if we're reading them as a service to Srila Prabhupada, and especially to Prabhupada's representative or Prabhupada himself, then that's not the same as an academic thing. We should be careful. There are a lot of people today studying Prabhupada's books just in an academic kind of way, and that's
and that's my question. I mean, you hinted it like with this Pariprashna Pranipatan Seva. So, but I mean, in what sense? How do we recognize our motivation when we are sitting with those books? I mean, like, it's kind of a question, how do I become sincere? But but
well, the Bhagavatam, says, the self describes its nature, Tadbhagave Sargojana Tagavipravo. That the Bhagavatam has a particular nature, it'll create a revolution. If we just start reading the Bhagavatam, then we're gonna see ourself reflected in the pages of the Bhagavatam. Realize, wow, I'm really a jerk, or I'm like this, or I'm like that. We'll see ourselves described in the Bhagavatam if we read in an introspective kind of way. And of course, maybe we read in a shallow kind of way. But just as the Padma Purana says that Nama Parada Yukta Namanyeva Haranchigam, even if you're doing Nama Parad, you should keep chanting. So the same way, even if we're reading in a shallow way, we should keep reading. And we should try to read in an introspective way. Because Prabhupada will speak to us through those books.
Yeah. So that would be like part of that Pranipat Seva, because Pariprashna is probably like you have to have a person to put the questions actually. But when you are with the book, then this ability to personalize it for yourself and seeing, wow, that's exactly relates to me, and that's how this purport helped me, and that would be the sign of proper approach and not academic approach to the text.
Yeah. I'll share another verse with you from the same article that I've put together. Let's see here. Oh, here it is. Yeah, Padma Purana. Guru Pujam, this is from Padma Purana, Bhumikanda 6743. Guru Pujam Akrit Vaiva Ya Shastram Shrotam Ichati Nakodoti Chasushusham Agya Bhangancha Bhavataha. Without worshiping a spiritual master, those who try to listen to the scriptures are not following scriptural injunctions. Rather, they're consciously breaking them. And in the Devi
so great. This is so great. Wow.
In the Devi Rahasya, there's a statement. Lord Shiva tells Parvati, Adikshita upadhyaya vihina shakti bhaktiman gurur abhave devesi ushtakam gurum acharat. Devi, a non-initiated person, in the absence of a real guru, should accept the book as a guru. But then in the next verse, he says, Yadi if kashyabhavad devi gurus tantra vichakshanaha dikshita shiva mantrena vaishnava suva lakshanaha tam parityaja yo devi para bhakto pibhaktiman pushtakam tu gurum kuryat sobhavech chiva gatakaha. But if there is, Jati, if there is a bona fide Vaishnava present, who's expert in all these shastras and things, and if you give them up and just take the book, then you become an offender to Lord Shiva. And why Lord Shiva? Because he's Vaishnavanamita Shambhu. He's a Vaishnava. So as the next subheading goes, we want to both hear and read. We want to do both things. But of the two, hearing is more important. Srila Prabhupada comments that many times. I'll tell you what, I don't. Do you still have this appendixes to Pariprashna. I'll drop them in our chat, so devotees can share this thing.
Once more, I didn't have it clear now because of the connection.
Well, I was going to say, I'll drop these appendixes to Pariprashna in our chat. And devotees can
Yeah. I'll be glad. And this Padma Purana was great.
Yeah, and also Krishna Kun's pointing out the quotes about reading the books. I want to add, I looked up some more today from Prabhupada, the last things we were reading about how we should have greed to read Rupa and Sanatan's books. I'll add that and make a video document.
Yeah.
Okay. All
yeah,
right.
I was. It's just. I was also very happy for how did you explain the relationship between Srila Prabhupada's books and the books of previous acharyas. I was so happy to hear it, express it as you did it. It was so nice. And actually the whole whole glorification of acharya's books today, it was so it was really blissful for me, because I grew up in the environment where I had to face all those phenomena that you mentioned, like it's forbidden to read other books and whatnot, you know.
You had some book Nazis there.
So it was like really pleasing my heart to have all those quotes by Srila Prabhupada.
We read Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which Gopi Pranayana Prabhu is nicely translated. But if it wasn't for Srila Prabhupada, we wouldn't have Gopi Pranayana Prabhu. We wouldn't know about Brihad Bhagavatamrita. If it wasn't for Srila Prabhupada, we wouldn't know about any of these books. So that's the first simple observation.
It's just a very quick comment in connection with the Acharya's books and Srila Prabhupada's books. Niranjan Maharaj was speaking about this recently, that during the pandemics for about a couple of years, he said that basically he wasn't reading Prabhupada's books, which is a first for him in all these years, but he was so much absorbed in the Acharya's books, and he was hearing Prabhupada's voice, and he felt that he really came closer to Srila Prabhupada by reading the Acharya's books. So I wanted to just share this with you, because Lila Purushottam specifically, because I think
it's very nice, because that was another my highlight. What I wanted to mention was this quote from Gopi Paranadana Prabhu's realization that when he afterwards, after having studied Srila Prabhupada's books, when he read Acharya's books, it helped him so much to appreciate Prabhupada's books and purpose, and he could see the connection between the Srila Prabhupada and Acharyas, and I really like that, because I have the same I don't dare to claim it realization, but same observation for myself.
And that's bona fide. It may sound a little silly to say that's bona fide, but sometimes when we come in contact with Vaishnavas in India, we may feel a little shy. Oh, we're just reading Prabhupada's books. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Everyone's supposed to be reading the books of their guru. And their Param Guru Dev, they should be taking shelter of him. All Vaishnavas, all bona fide Vaishnavas teach that. It's the bona fide process. You should have full faith in it.
Yeah. So thank you so much for today's.
I think maybe speculation that the written sound also carries different powers by poetic expressions. The rhyme and singing these words and using special languages like Sanskrit, can you say something about that? Well, if you can read it, it depends on how you recite the Sanskrit, I guess, too. If you just say, Sarvam Vidarmin Paritmya, our number, then I don't know how much benefit there is for that. And therefore, it's very, very important. One of the first things we're taught when we start learning Sanskrit is pronunciation. Pronunciation is very, very important, because that sound vibration, there is poetic expressions in it, and it is very sweet. And just just reading. That's why I like very much. Sometimes I take the time and go and look in the Sanskrit for Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary or Jiva or whoever, and sometimes I read them out because it's powerful to read that original language, to hear that. And of course, we should try to pronounce it as best we can. And you're asking, can an online media carry the other three forms of sound? Well, it imitates Vaikari, that sound. And in that sense, it can't do it. But in another sense, if we have a relationship with the person, and then it reminds us of that person, and if we're, especially the relationship, meaning we're rendering service, we're rendering service, and without that service, Krishna in the Gita, at the end of the Gita, says, Yaidam. He says that idam te narapaskaya, that somebody who's not austere, who's not doing service, you can't speak this to them. So when we hear that sound vibration, especially if we were personally present in the class, or if it's somebody we have a relationship with, it touches our heart. Something is there. You can't say there's not something there. Can we say, Jai Gora's asking, I think, yeah. Can we say that my desire to not approach a teacher and avoid a personal hearing is a symptom of my pride and my intelligence? Yeah, that's a good realization. I think I know everything. Why should I ask anything else? And therefore, we see, my grandma, she said that one of the symptoms of humility is that when the teacher says something and you don't understand it, you ask a question. But if you're proud, then you're embarrassed. You don't want to ask because then maybe people are going to giggle. Man, he didn't understand 2 + 2 is 4. Man, give me a break. Where is this guy from? But if you don't understand 2 + 2 is 4 and you don't ask about it, then you're going to have big troubles. If you just act like, yeah, I do understand it, then maybe it is a very simple, small thing. But that very foundational principle, if you've walked away from the teacher and not understood it because of your pride, then you're going to have serious misunderstandings later on. So pariprashana is very, very important. Gaurani Taiprabhu says, but reading Vaishnava books, not in the same mood as Srila Prabhupada, could cause distraction, isn't it? Yes. And that's why that's why Rupa and Sanatan's books are very, very important. They're compared to purified gold. Whereas some other Vaishnava's books, I just finished reading, I gave a copy to somebody here. I just finished reading this Govinda Kadacha. And I'm happy to read it, actually, because part of my service to Srila Prabhupada, my devotional service, is that I should know about different literatures. So Banu Maharaj had translated that book. I always heard bad things about it. I have a copy in Bengali and never looked at it because I have 2 other books, big books, just talking about why that book is bogus. They're scholarly books, and all they do is just talk about why Govinda Kadacha is bogus book. But then I was surprised that Banu Maharaj had translated it. I thought, well, anyway, let me look at it. So I started going through it. And wow, there's many interesting and inspiring things. For example, there's a story toward the end of the book. I was just telling Krishna Kun the other day that some Brahmin boy came and he said, please forgive my father. He's criticizing all the Vaishnavas. And Mahaprabhu gave some mercy to him, and that boy became a Vaishnava. And when his father found out, his father became furious. And he picked up a stick and he came to Mahaprabhu and said, I'm going to beat you. And Mahaprabhu said, okay, go ahead. You can beat me. He said, but when you hit me, every time you hit me, you should chant Hare Krishna. If you agree with that, you can hit me as many times as you want. Just chant Hare Krishna every time. Now, that story is not found in any other biography that I know of. Is that story bona fide? Well, that story is from the realization of Govinda Das. And parts of that book, they're not as nice by far as Chaitanya Charitamrita. Parts of Chaitanya Bhagavat even are not as nice as Chaitanya Charitamrita. And with the speak of Chaitanya Mangal or Bhakti Ratnaka or Prema-bhakti-candrika or other books, Chaitanya Charitamrita, therefore, if we don't have any other book, that's all that we need. Because Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is so perfect. And in Chaitanya Charitamrita, we have all the books of the Goswamis. He's given us condensed verses and quotes elaborately from the Goswami literatures. So we want that. And if we hear from someone else, as you're pointing out, institutionally perverted, I would not necessarily institutionally perverted, although there may be some differences in the family line, which we could call institutional perversion. But I would be more worried about misunderstandings in translation, misunderstanding of the Bhav. And that's why it's really important for us, if we want to be serious about literature, we have to do a little bit of hard work, and it's really not that hard of work, and learn to pick up a dictionary and see what different Sanskrit. I did that some today with some of these different words and things, and push ourselves a little bit. It's not that I have a great vocabulary. I know some words, but we should push ourselves a little bit, go to a dictionary and see what's there, and then we can try to understand some of the subtle moods of it. Because prati shloki pratyakshana, every verse, every syllable has so many different purports and subtle moods. You know, a married man, I give this example so often. He asks his wife, "Well, dear, is it okay if I go with the boys instead of having some time with you?" And the wife says, "Fine, go right ahead." You know, and the newly married guy says, "Wow, that's great." She said, "Fine, go right ahead." But no, she didn't say, "Fine, go right ahead." She said, "You're a jerk, and I don't want you to do that." So that there's so much to be spoken in the subtle vibration, and this is the way she looks at you, etc. And as Gauni Taipa was pointing out, Sri Damodar Goswami always checked the writings of the Goswamis, the writings of the Vaishnavas, before he gave permission to read it to Lord Chaitanya or the Vaishnavas. Yeah, because there would be some Siddhanta Viruddha, some mistake in the Siddhanta or something which would disturb everyone. That's a difficult thing. I want to comment though too. Sometimes devotees, they go on the warpath. Did you hear that person in the class yesterday? They said that we fall from the spiritual world, or we don't fall from the spiritual world, or this or that. And they get really disturbed because they have a particular understanding of what's proper Siddhanta, and they get angry about it. I think that's a big misunderstanding. I think that Srila Prabhupada, of course, he wanted proper Siddhanta, but he understood that when devotees start giving class, of course he understood that some of them are going to say weird, screwy things because they're his disciples, and he heard him saying some of those things, and he would ask them to speak. But still he wanted them to speak. And there should be some discussion, but that discussion should be respectful and loving, and not in the attack mode that, man, I'm going to smash the hell out of you. You're just a jerk. You said this wrong thing, and I know the right thing. And that's not, that destroys a Vaishnava community. We should always have the mood that I'm approaching these books and I'm understanding them with my material senses. And until the day comes when I read that first verse in the Bhagavatam and I see and I hear Krishna playing the flute, I directly experience it. Until that day comes, I've not really understood Srimad Bhagavatam. I have only some theoretical understanding. And I'm attached to that, and that theoretical understanding is helpful. And I should discuss it with others, but I shouldn't be so proud and crazy to think that my theoretical understanding is better than your theoretical understanding. Maybe it is, but let's discuss it in terms of Shastra, not just because I like my way of thinking better than your way of thinking. Okay. Anything else? Krishna Kun has something else he wants to share. It's okay.
So many things, but the big thing for me was that Mahashaya, that word that is used, because Rupa Sanatana is not only fully absorbed in rasa.
Oh, louder, please.
She liked the word Mahashaya, but Rupa and Sanatan, they're not only absorbed in rasa, but go ahead, Krishna Kun.
But they are also able to have a look at us. That was relevant.
Yeah.
So many details. I loved Prakata, your description about that, and so many things, but this was something relevant. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and stop there, and I think that next week we should be on course to have another class. No problem, another session. And this Mataji Eka Radhika, I don't know what happened to her.
But maybe she'll be here next week. We'll see. She told me she's going to come today. Anyway. Okay, thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol, Vancha Kalpa Darubhishcha, Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha, Ananda Koti Vaishnava.